Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Welcome into another edition of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We got a fantastic episode lined up for you guys here today. A lot going on in the baseball world, a lot of good things to discuss. Albert Pujols has found a new home. The Dodgers are making moves. A few Major League debuts have taken place here over the past couple of days. There's also quite a few injuries that continue to pile up across baseball that we're going to discuss. And then finally, on the tail end of the episode, we're going to get into my power rankings for the first time this year. Let you know where everybody stands heading into the end of the month of May here. So hopefully you guys had a fantastic weekend, enjoyed yourself out there. I played a round of golf, shot an 85 this past weekend, 40 on the front, 45 on the back. Ran out of gas there a little bit, but had a ton of fun getting out playing 18 for the first time this summer. So hopefully you guys were able to get into something fun and enjoy the weekend before heading back to work here on Monday. But this episode should make your Monday a little bit easier for everybody listening out there. And let's jump right into it. So we talked last week about how Albert Pujols was let go by the LA Angels, and I gave you guys 5 potential landing spots on where he could end up, and of course, none of those 5 ended up signing Albert Pujols. There was a bit of an out-of-the-box team that signed Albert, the Los Angeles Dodgers. But the more you look into it, the more it breaks down and the more it makes sense, and we're going to get into a handful of those factors here. So, like I said, Albert Pujols to the Dodgers on a major league contract. So he's going to be on the big league club. He is going to be getting paid the prorated portion of the major league minimum, which is roughly $420,000. So basically, you can subtract that $420,000 from the $30 million that the Angels are still going to owe him, and basically the Dodgers are getting Pujols for nothing, and the Angels are going to pay him to play across town there in Los Angeles and ultimately make the playoffs here for the first time in a number of years for his career. So, 41 years old, but again, the more you look at it, the more it makes a bit of sense, right? With Max Muncy, the everyday first baseman, but he has a little bit of versatility, right? You can move Muncy around. You can throw Pujols into first base occasionally, and then you can move Muncy over to third if you're looking to rest Justin Turner, or temporarily even, give Gavin Lux a day or two off because he's been struggling here early on in the season. So move Muncy to second base, right? It gives them some position flexibility here in the infield to give some guys some time off the next time they go through a tough stretch and begin to struggle. So moving Muncy around, giving Lux some time to recoup certainly makes a bit of sense for Pujols, but his main objective there and kind of what he's going to do for the Dodgers certainly looks like a right-handed hitter off the bench. And I know Albert Pujols wanted to be an everyday player. There were quite a few quotes about that's the reason why the Angels had to move on from him, because he wasn't willing to do it for the Angels. But when the Dodgers give you a call on your cell phone, the team that won the World Series last year, added more pieces this offseason, certainly one of the World Series favorites, your flexibility to become off the bench certainly increases. And I think Albert at this point in his career is certainly missing playoff baseball, wants to get back to that time in St. Louis when they were in the postseason every year, and was a bit more willing to say, I'll be a pinch hitter for you guys. I'll help out the ball club and come off the bench, no problem, because only 41 of Pujols' 12,486 regular season plate appearances have come as a pinch hitter. So really, the guy's done it less than 1% of his career and never come off the bench, which is why he really wasn't looking to do it here moving forward. But again, for the Dodgers, a bit more willing to enter into that position for them. And the Dodgers looking for a right-handed power hitter off the bench because the Dodgers as a team through the weekend only have a .663 OPS against left-handed pitchers. And this is 136 points fewer than their OPS against right-handers. So they've really struggled against lefties. And yes, Albert, he hasn't been fantastic this year, but he's also been very clutch for the Angels. In 18 plate appearances under what Baseball Reference qualifies as, quote, late and close situations, Pujols is hitting .313 with a .389 on base and a .500 slash line. So he's been more effective when games get tighter late in the game. And that's where a lot of his opportunities are going to present themselves here. Because, again, if he's pinch hitting, he's coming in for a pitcher late in the game, probably guys on base, a big spot. And he's still been able to deliver in these situations. So, again, right-handed power hitter off the bench for a team that has struggled against left-handed pitchers, it certainly makes more sense from a baseball perspective. As well as for the Dodgers, you're adding your fourth former MVP on the roster. They have Cody Bellinger, Mookie Betts, Clayton Kershaw, and now Albert Pujols. And the Dodgers are only the fourth team in Major League Baseball history to have four former MVP winners. Yeah, they joined the 78 Reds, the 82 Angels, and then most recently the 96 Red Sox. They also have three former Cy Young winners in Kershaw, Bauer, and Price. So this team is just absolutely loaded with talent, and it's certainly, anytime you can add Albert Pujols to help out the kids develop, it's going to be a big addition for L.A. And looking at the history of moves for the Dodgers, they are arguably baseball's most sabermetrically advanced team when it comes to adding veterans and players like this on deals in the past. I mean, just to name a few others, you had Chase Utley, who joined the Dodgers back in 2015, and he was excellent for them. The Phillies moved on because they were starting their rebuild back in 2015. The Dodgers acquired him in a midseason trade, and he ended up playing 3.5 years for the Dodgers. And people around the Dodgers basically say Utley teaching those guys some of the smallest details that could really make a difference in some of the most important games really resonates with Friedman, the general manager, special assistant at the time. He's kind of been on the lines of adding these types of pieces to this particular team to help them get over the hump, which they were finally able to last year. And Pujols should help continue that trend moving forward. So beyond Utley, who ended up being there for 3.5 years, and from Albert Pujols' side of things, yes, there's been talk of retirement after this year just because it was the last year of his deal. But he hasn't said officially that he's going to be retiring. So if things go well in L.A., he enjoys being a pinch hitter role, they win in the postseason, and they offer him another veteran minimum next year to come back in the same role, potentially he could do that as well, and this could extend his career for a few years beyond what he was looking at out there with the Angels. You also have David Freese, who was added by the Dodgers in the past. He was acquired in an August waiver wire deal back in 2008 from the Pittsburgh Pirates. And it stuck out how good he was in the clubhouse. He was great with his teammates. He had the young guys always around him. They seemed to gravitate towards him. He re-signed again in the offseason, so was there for longer than just the 6 weeks being added into the clubhouse. And voices like this can help young kids in the Dodgers organization continue to grow and continue to develop, because after Pujols left the Angels, Mike Trout had some fantastic things to say about him. He said, quote, "He mentored me throughout my career so far. Everything you can accomplish on a baseball field, I can go up to him and talk about anything. If I were struggling at the plate, he knows the perfect time to come up and throw something out. He has that feel about him. I can't thank him enough. He was an unbelievable person and an unbelievable friend to me." End quote. So the best player in the game basically telling people, hey, I was able to go to Albert whenever I was struggling, certainly makes a ton of sense to bring him in and continue to develop that clubhouse camaraderie, pull the team together, and help some of the kids who may be struggling. You know, Gavin Lux, I said, was struggling. Well, he's only hitting 143 against left-handed hitters. So he'll be able to help Lux continue to develop and kind of get over some of those struggles that he's had earlier in his career. So, but the Dodgers didn't only add Pujols. They've been very busy this week. LA certainly looking at that 4-14 stretch that they went through, knowing that they're going to have to add some pieces here if they're going to want to repeat as champions. So they also made a trade with the Tampa Bay Rays to add Yoshihito Tsugo in a trade. So Tsugo was designated for assignment from the Rays, and ultimately the Dodgers struck a trade for him, which helped out the Rays when it comes to monetary purposes. He's in the second year of a $12 million deal. He signed with the Rays, and he's going to make $7 million this year. Now, again, he's been struggling. He's only 13 for 78, hitting 167 early in this season. But again, get him in that clubhouse, get him around Albert Pujols. Maybe he can turn things around. In the 2 seasons with the Rays, he's hit 187 with 8 home runs and 272 plate appearances. But he was very good over in Japan. Seems to be a bit overmatched here in America in Major League Baseball. But again, the depth for the Dodgers is something that they've really looked at this year and something that they're continuing to add to. So it's a fascinating time to be a Dodgers fan because the top end of the roster has been very, very good so far this year. I mean, again, the top talent, multiple MVPs, multiple Cy Youngs, but the bench and rotational pieces have really struggled. So going 4-14, yes, they've won 3 straight games here heading into Sunday, but it's certainly time to look in the mirror and see if they want to make additions. They also add infielder Travis Blankenhorn. He was designated for assignment by the Twins over the weekend, and the Dodgers put in a claim for him. He's a former top pick, a third-round draft pick in 2015. He's only played in 2 games for the Twins this year. 1 last year, 1 this year, 2 for the Twins overall. He's only had 4 plate appearances, so he was just taking up a spot there on the 40-man roster, and ultimately the Twins were looking for more production out of that and designated Blankenhorn for assignment. But the Dodgers, again, being very analytically driven, very sabermetric, savvy organization, looks at a former third-round pick, and they think getting him into their building, working with him, they're going to be able to get him back on track and continue to help them out. So 3 bench additions this week alone for the Dodgers to add to their rotation of players and maybe be able to give more guys a bit of time off here moving into this season. So are the Dodgers done? I mean, I don't think so. I think in that NL West, the way the Giants are playing, the Padres are obviously very good. I think the Dodgers could add pieces at the trade deadline, specifically pitching. Again, you can never have enough pitching when it comes to the postseason. So a few names I would look out for. Potentially Pablo Lopez for the Miami Marlins. Again, lefty Taylor Rogers has been very good for them. Alcantara, Sixto Sanchez. That may leave Pablo Lopez available through a trade. He's controllable for the next 3 years. So again, you want to trade for pitchers with control that have more than 1 year on their contract, and losing Dustin May to injury, it could certainly lead Lopez to be a potential option because his price tag also isn't going to be extremely high with the Marlins. And then for some bullpen help, maybe Ian Kennedy of the Texas Rangers. He's been the closer for the Rangers. He's got 10 saves. He's finished 14 games. He struck out 20 in 15 innings. Obviously, the Rangers are rebuilding, so they're going to trade anybody of value who could get something in return for them. And that's just a move I think will be made. Maybe not by the Dodgers, but somebody is certainly going to go get Ian Kennedy. And then the last one here is Josh Stallmount, a relief pitcher for the Kansas City Royals. He's been very good in Kansas City, and with Kansas City's recent slide, he could potentially be available in a trade, and he has some control coming out of the postseason. I mean, he's 27 years old, so he's right in his prime, and then looking at the next couple of years, he would be an excellent addition to the back end of that bullpen there for the Dodgers. So I don't think they're done. I think they make another move, and ultimately we're going to see LA continue to improve. But one last thing I wanted to touch on here in segment one. We mentioned Jaron Kelenic was going to make his major league debut, and he did so with a bang. I mean, he hit a 400-foot home run to right center during his first game, 109.3 exit velo. He then also had a double in the game, and only 21 years old, the number 4 overall prospect in all of baseball, certainly has been impressive. He was 3 for 4, 2 doubles, 3 RBIs, 2 runs scored. So Kelenic continues to come in and just absolutely dominates. I mean, he saw pitches, he went deep in at-bats, and again, if you're a Seattle Mariners fan, it's a fun time to be a Mariners fan for the first time in a long time because this team's playing good baseball. Some of the prospects are right on the cusp of being called up, and they're certainly going to continue to make a difference out there in Seattle if they can hang around in that AL West with the likes of the Astros, the A's, again, the Angels making moves to try to get back to the postseason, but it's certainly a fun time to root for the Mariners, and I'm super excited to watch Kelenic for the rest of the year and the rest of his career because the kid looks like the real deal, and unfortunately the Mets may be on the wrong end of that Edwin Diaz-Robinson Cano trade with Kelenic being an absolute difference maker for the Mariners. But that does it here for segment number 1 of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We'll step aside here now for a word from one of our sponsors and one of our sister shows, but when we come back, we're going to talk injuries. There's been a number of injuries over the past couple of days, so I want to keep you guys up to date on everything. Stick around. We'll be right back after this.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA, to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back to the second segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. If you guys haven't checked us out on social media, do myself a favor. Head over to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Give us a like, give us a follow, click subscribe. On Facebook, it is the GSMC Baseball Podcast, as well as Twitter, GSMC Baseball. So whenever you're on your social media apps, which I know you guys are out there on your iPhone, your Android, easily available, hit that blue little bird. That'll take you to Twitter. Type in GSMC Baseball into that search bar. You'll find our page. Give us a like, a follow, because we'll put out polls. We put out the latest takes, what's going on a day-to-day basis in Major League Baseball. And then on Facebook. I know Facebook isn't as popular with the younger generation, but if you're listening out there and you have a Facebook page, which I'm pretty sure you do, you can find us on there as well at GSMC Baseball, and we'll keep you up to date on everything that's taking place across the great sport of baseball out there. So if you haven't done so yet, check those out. But here in segment number 2, I wanted to talk to you guys about the injuries that are taking place across the sports. Last night, my Philadelphia Phillies, that's Saturday night, recording this here on Sunday, the Phillies are dealing with a ton of injuries. I mean, to the point where they may even have to put a pitcher out in the outfield just due to what's going on with the roster, because some of their bench pieces are currently playing. Nick Maton, he's playing shortstop. You got Matt Joyce, who's down with an injury. And then you have Bryce Harper leave the game last night with a right shoulder soreness. He's considered day-to-day. And manager Joe Girardi said that Bryce had never brought this up in the past. This is a new injury for Harper. And when he came to them, they removed him from the game last night, put Scott Kingery into the outfielder. And Kingery, certainly, he is absolutely lost at the plate is just striking out. He looks absolutely horrible. He probably needs to be sent down to the minor leagues for an extended period of time to try to find his swing. So if you put him out in right field, that becomes a black hole offensively. But I don't know if there's any other options, right? They're going down the list. They've tried Quinn, who's out hurt. They got Odubel Herrera in center field. Adam Hazley's walked away from the team to take some time. So they're running out of options out there in the outfield. I mean, there's talks locally here in Philadelphia of possibly putting Vince Velasquez out in right field because he's the best athlete as a pitcher. And if you guys haven't seen it, he's played left field in the past when we got to a 14, 13-inning game, made a nice diving catch, threw a guy out at home plate. So he's certainly good enough defensively to not embarrass himself, but just the options out there are becoming extremely, extremely thin. And a lot of this has to do with injuries elsewhere. I talked about Nick Maton playing shortstop. Well, this is because Didi Gregorious is dealing with a hip flexor strain, a hip flexor issue. He's also got an elbow problem. Apparently there's a ton of swelling on his elbow, and they've already drained it once, and you can't drain things multiple times very quickly because the risk of infection then increases. So this time, doctors are having the conversation of letting it drain and the swelling go down on its own, and that's going to take some time, maybe a week or two. He's trying to avoid the injured list, but it certainly doesn't look that way. And, you know, Maton's one of those guys that has position flexibility, but if you have him at shortstop, he certainly can't play the outfield for you. And you also have the catching position, JT Realmuto. He left Saturday's game with a left wrist issue. He also took a foul ball off the left kneecap. So just ultimately getting beat up behind the dish, which then means you need to put Andrew Knapp behind the plate. So you can't even move Knapp to first base. Hoskins out to left field, put McCutchen in right field. Your flexibility is very, very thin. I mean, the Phillies may not have any bench players available to them Sunday down against the Blue Jays. And it is just so frustrating to watch as a fan and almost kind of fascinating because you're starting shortstop, you're starting right fielder, you're starting catcher. Three of probably, four of the best players, right? 3 out of 4 of the best players are not available to you. And they are listed as day-to-day. Everyone's trying to avoid the injured list, but I think a couple of guys are headed there for the next week or two. But from a Saturday night game to a Sunday day game, that's not a lot of turnaround to be able to get a guy down there from Lehigh Valley. If you were at home playing in Philadelphia, it's an hour-and-a-half drive from AAA. Maybe you could throw somebody into the lineup. But hopping on a plane when the game ends at 11, trying to figure it out, being down there, being ready to go by 1 o'clock on Sunday, certainly isn't the road you're looking to take as a baseball team. And the Phillies, they have an off day Monday, thank goodness, but Sunday, certainly going to be fascinating to watch ultimately what they do with those injuries, those players, and what positions those guys end up at. So hopefully the Phillies can get through this, but having Gregorious, Harper, and Realmuto out doesn't look good for the Philadelphia Phillies. You also have Corey Seager, who was removed from Saturday's game after sustaining a fractured right hand after being hit by a pitch. And he's going to miss extended periods of time, most likely upwards of a month at least, due to, letting that hand heal itself. It's one of those injuries where surgery is probably not required, but ultimately maybe a cast, a soft cast, so he's not moving it around. But the Dodgers dealing with another injury, which again is why they made all these moves here in the past 24 hours to add some of these bench pieces. Maybe the guy from the Twins comes in and plays if they have to move guys around. So Corey Seager's left hand right hand fracture, not a good look for the Dodgers as they continue to try to figure things out. They had won 3 straight after a 4-14 stretch, but another injury to the Dodgers is making this a long summer. Steven Strasburg for the Nationals, dealing with a right shoulder issue. He's going to make a rehab start for AAA here on Sunday. He was cleared to start throwing bullpen sessions on Thursday. Apparently it went very well. So now he's going to start his rehab process in the minor leagues and look to get back to the Nationals rotation here within the next week or two. And Washington sure could use it. I mean, Patrick Corbin had a nice outing his last time out, but overall as a team and as a unit, that pitching staff is struggling a little bit there in Washington and would certainly welcome back Strasburg with open arms. For the New York Yankees, Aaron Hicks, he was diagnosed with a torn tendon sheath in his left wrist which may require surgery. The Yankees are going to try to treat it with anti-inflammation medication for now, give him some rest for a week or so, see if swelling decreases, and then ultimately decide if he needs surgery after that. But Aaron Hicks is going to go on the injured list as the Yankees are trying to turn a corner. They lose a big piece, as well as Giancarlo Stanton. He was scratched earlier this weekend with left quad tightness. He missed Friday and Saturday's action. Again, Stanton, he's one of those guys in and out of the lineup. I know Yankees fans are beginning to get frustrated. They can never really seem to put together an entire unit for an extended period of time. But Stanton, again, that soft tissue injuries, those muscles are giving him problems, and now it's his left quad that's flaring up for him a little bit. And then with the New York Mets, so staying in New York, J.D. Davis, it looked like he was going to be activated from the injured list on Saturday, but instead he was assigned for his rehab assignment to AAA Syracuse before he returns back. So ultimately he's going to get a couple of games down in the minor leagues, give him some at-bats, try to get back into the flow before he is called up. So a bit of a turn there for the Mets, who thought Davis would be back over the weekend, but it looks like it's going to be a few more days before he re-enters the lineup. Seth Lugo for the Mets. He's dealing with a loose body in his right elbow, which means he's going to head to rehab in AAA in the next few days. And a loose body in the elbow essentially means part of a bone that could be floating around and is no longer attached. This doesn't require immediate surgery. It just adds to swelling, inflammation, and it's going to be something to monitor for the rest of the year until ultimately they can get that removed, which will lead to a further absence for Seth Lugo. Brandon Nimmo, he's still being bothered by a bone bruise in his left index finger. He was hitting for AAA, still feeling some of the issues. He could have been activated on Friday, but again, due to some pain, due to some swelling, it's going to be a few more days before ultimately he's back in the lineup here moving forward. And then Jacob deGrom. What's going on with deGrom? He's doing better and better, according to the Mets, dealing with right lat tightness. They haven't yet set when he's going to throw a bullpen. They're looking to be cautious with him because, of course, you don't want to rush him back, similar to last time where he only missed one start, went 5-6 innings, and then ultimately started to have some problems in that lat once again. You're going to want him to be almost 100% before he returns here moving forward. Shohei Ohtani for the Angels. His next start was scheduled to be Tuesday, but that's been pushed back just due to, quote, general fatigue, Joe Maddon said over the weekend. This was a precautionary move, and ultimately he is not going to be skipped in the rotation. They're just going to move around some guys and when they throw due to some off days because ultimately Ohtani's been fantastic for the Angels. He's been great offensively as well as on the mound, and that's hard, man. I mean, as a guy who went both ways, pitching and playing the field at the Division I level, I understand how that arm can fatigue. You get dead arm. Yes, he's only DHing when he's hitting, and I was playing third or first base, so I still had to throw the ball. But ultimately, that'll start to wear on you, and it's a long season, so the Angels continue to be a little bit cautious on how they're deploying Ohtani here moving forward. Ronald Acuna for the Braves. I mean, this guy's getting beat up a little bit. He had a left ankle injury on Thursday night's game against the Blue Jays. X-rays came back negative, but he missed the games on Friday and Saturday. So again, dealing with a sprain, dealing with some swelling, some issues. You're going to want to take your time and not rush him back, especially after he had that core issue from sliding into home plate a few weeks ago. You're going to want to make sure he's close to 100% before you run him back out there. You also have Jake Cave of the Minnesota Twins. He was put on the 60-day injured list with a stress reaction in his lower back. So the outfielders for the Twins are just getting beat up. I mean, Byron Buxton's on the injured list. Alex Kreloff also on the injured list. He hit off a tee on Friday as he continues to come back from a sprained right wrist and ultimately looking to return and perform much better than he did early in the season. So you add Cave to Kreloff and Buxton, and the outfield for the Twins is very, very thin here early on. For the Dodgers, we just talked about it with Seager, but David Price, he's got a right hamstring strain. He threw a live batting session on Friday, a couple of innings, 30 pitches. He's going to throw one more session before he is activated. You also have Cody Bellinger, fractured left fibula. Zach McKinstry dealing with an oblique. Both of those guys are getting close to their rehab assignments in the minor leagues and are nearing a return, but give them a week or two of minor league rehab before they're back in the lineup. Jose Abreu, him and Hunter Dozier were in a violent collision down the first baseline over the weekend. Dozier hit a pop-up right down the line in the infield. Abreu came running in to potentially make the catch. Dozier was kind of running with his head down, and ultimately those two guys, ran right into each other. So Abreu was able to get back after having a day off. Dozier has a quad contusion and neck discomfort, so he was put on the concussion protocol, the concussion injured list, which is 7 days. But just a big collision there, and it's good to hear ultimately neither of those guys is going to miss a ton of time because you don't usually see collisions like that on the baseball field. It was, that one was ugly. Jazz Chisholm for the Marlins, a left hamstring strain. He's looking to come back here over the weekend, and if not, coming up with their series against the Phillies. So he could be back in the near future. And then you have an update on Ke'Bryan Hayes for the Pirates. He's got that left wrist issue. He's progressing well, and potentially here in the near future is going to have a minor league rehab assignment. The Pirates said they wrote it down in pencil, basically saying, if he doesn't have another setback, which he's already had one time trying to return from this injury, which is why they're being a bit more cautious there in Pittsburgh, but we could see him relatively soon back for the Pirates. And then Paul DeJong for the Cardinals. He was put on the 10-day injured list on Friday. He has a non-displaced left rib fracture. So basically that means the rib didn't completely remove itself and reposition, but ultimately is dealing with a broken rib, and he was put on the injured list, which was retroactive back to Thursday. So he's going to miss some time after being ultimately pulled from the game there and dealing with that issue. So those were the main injuries, but there's a lot of guys day to day. I mean, the Red Sox dealing with injuries. You got Detroit dealing with some injuries. The Dodgers, again, they're beat up across the board. The Twins, the Padres, let's see. Taylor Williams, Profar, Mateo, Hosmer, all of those guys are day-to-day with undisclosed injuries. You got the Mariners, Sadler, Gonzalez, Middleton, Fraley dealing with day-to-day stuff. So if you just pull up the injury report, there's a lot going on here, day-to-day, where guys could potentially miss some time but are ultimately looking to avoid the injured list, unlike some of those guys we talked about earlier here in this segment. So keep an eye out on those Phillies. Some roster moves coming. The Dodgers, they already made their roster moves, but across the board, injuries running rampant here in Major League Baseball. So that does it for segment number 2 of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We'll step aside one more time here for a word from one of our sponsors and one of our sister shows. But when we come back, I'm going to give you guys my power rankings for the first time this year. Where does everybody stand? Again, I like to give it a month, 2 months to ultimately see how teams are shaking out. And then we're going to finally rank them 1 through 30 and see where your team's at. So stick around, everyone. I'm Kevin Mahalik, your host. We'll be right back after this.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hello again and welcome in to the third segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Please rate and review the podcast wherever you guys are listening. I know there's plenty of platforms out there where GSMC is available. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, Pandora, Alexa, whatever it is, more and more are becoming available. And the GSMC Podcast Network is out there for you guys to listen to. So wherever you're listening to this baseball podcast, if it's Apple Podcast, just scroll down, hit that star all the way on the right. That'll give us a 5-star rating. We really would appreciate that, as that helps us continue to grow and spread the word online about the best baseball podcast available for you guys on a daily basis. And then leave a comment. Let me know what you guys are thinking out there. I'm about to go into my power rankings here, so I know you guys are going to have some takes on ultimately who should be where I messed up. Give me your feedback. Let me know who you think the top teams are. I'd love to read them here on the show and have this be a little bit more interactive between you guys, the listeners out there, and myself, as well as the other hosts within the baseball podcast. But also do yourself a favor. Whatever else you're into, whatever hobbies you have, if it's other sports, the NHL playoffs are getting underway. Sunday, here's the last day of the NBA regular season. Those playoffs are going to start here. You got the NFL coming in, and if it's not just sports, if you're into news, politics, books, movies, whatever it is, GSMC has a podcast for you guys to check out. So wherever you're listening to this, hit that search icon, click GSMC, and you'll get about 20 to 25 different shows that are fantastic with a ton of quality hosts available, bringing you guys content every day out there. So rate and review the podcast. We certainly appreciate it. But jumping into our power rankings here, and ultimately first time taking a swing at these, and there are plenty of, kind of tiers when it comes to power rankings, right? A lot of teams are neck and neck when it comes to their records, but ultimately, how have they been playing lately? Where do they stack up? The bottom of it is pretty easy moving forward. I mean, at number 30, I have the Detroit Tigers. And honestly, the Tigers, yes, they've played a bit better of late, but ultimately, they have the worst run differential in baseball. They are a minus 65 in run differential. Now, they are 6-4 in their last 10, so they've started to play better baseball, but a surprising sweep against the Astros in early April. Since that point, they're about 7-20, so really gone downhill, but it's all about developing the young talent in Detroit. I mean, we knew this coming in. It would be another rebuilding year. Yes, Miguel Cabrera still on a large contract, but the young arms are where everybody should be pointing their attention, and if Casey Mize can continue to improve, if Tariq Skubal continues to improve, and this past week they both threw the ball well. So again, there's a bit of a bright spot there for Detroit, but ultimately this year is not about where they finish in the standings, but ultimately how these young kids continue to develop to figure out who's going to be part of the core moving forward when this team's ready to contend here in a year or two. At number 29, I have the Colorado Rockies. They are 15-25. They are 4-6 in their last 10 games. And, I mean, honestly, again, the Rockies, new GM, going to trade Trevor Story. It's just going to be a long summer. On the road, they've really, really struggled. They are 2-14 on the road away from Coors Field. So 13-11 and at home, but 2-14 on the road. So if you guys are in a state out there that allows sports gambling, bet against the Rockies on the road, because it's certainly been tough. Now, they did pick up a series win over the Giants this week, but then were swept by the Cardinals, and those road spots continue to really hurt them. So good news is Charlie Blackmon's starting to turn it around. I mean, the guy hit 148 in his first 20 games or so, and now he's been hitting about 350 in the last couple of weeks. So started to flick the switch there. And if you're looking for a bright spot as a Rockies fan, that's pretty much it. At number 28, I have the Minnesota Twins. They have the worst winning percentage in all of baseball, 13-24 overall, and 2-8 in their last 10. But just based on talent on the roster, I give them a bit of the benefit of the doubt. They are 12-9 in 9-inning games this year. So literally 9-inning games, 12-9. But they're 0-4 in 7-inning games. So they've been swept in both doubleheaders. And they're 0-7 in extra inning games. So just fascinating how out of the norm the Twins have really struggled. But man, during 9-inning games over 500, certainly fascinating. But man, 1-11 record with 7 blown saves and 12 chances. The bullpen has just really sunk the Twins, and they're going to need to add somebody there stat. At number 27, I have the Baltimore Orioles. They are 16-23. They've lost 4 in a row and also 2-8 in their last 10 games. So the Orioles continue to struggle. I mean, Joe Means did throw a no-hitter, which was an absolute clinic. But outside of Means and what's going on there, it's certainly been a tough sledding for the Orioles. So they won back-to-back series at the end of April. But since then, just a tough week. Getting swept by Boston and just continuing to struggle if you're an Orioles fan out there. At number 26, I have the Washington Nationals. They are 15-20 and 3-7 in their last 10. So the Nationals just, man, I don't know what's going on there. I was high on them earlier in the year, but Josh Bell, Kyle Schwarber, they're going to need more out of those guys. Those were their 2 big offensive additions during the offseason. Yes, Juan Soto was out with an injury, so it's been tough sledding, but they got swept by the Braves, back-to-back walk-off losses to the Yankees. Again, Bell hitting 141, Schwarber hitting 193. Those guys have just not produced like the Nationals need them to in order to keep that offense afloat, especially with Soto out. He has since returned, so that should help them moving forward here. But again, that's just a tough break for the Nationals. The Pittsburgh Pirates at number 25, 17-22 overall. They have won a couple straight to get to 4-6 in their last 10. But, man, the Pirates just, they were 2-8 before then, and just a long road ahead for Pittsburgh here as they continue to try to get out of the basement when it comes. I mean, they were 12-11 on April 27th and then went 2-8. And again, Cabrian Hayes continues to be injured. He's having trouble coming back. They did claim outfielder Ben Gamel off of waivers from Cleveland within the past week. So they're doing a bunch of roster shuffling, trying to get some marginal improvements, trying to stay relevant there in the National League Central. But again, it looks like a long summer for the Buccos. The Texas Rangers at number 24. They are in at 18-23 here currently. They've lost 5 straight games since being 500 at 18-18. So it's been a tough week here if you're a Rangers fan. Aroldis Garcia, he has played in Cuba, Japan, the Dominican Republic, the minors. He's now starring for the Rangers, a 28-year-old rookie. He's helped get them close to 500, but just not enough to get them over the hump and make them extremely relevant here. And it's a tough time down there in Arlington to be a Rangers fan, as ultimately, again, 500, dumping 5 straight, tough break for them. Let's see. Next on the list, I have the Miami Marlins. They are 17-22. They've lost 2 in a row, 4-6 in their last 10. So the Marlins, they're 2-8 in 1-run games. Somehow, because of that, they have a +4 run differential. That's continued to decline. It was upwards of +20 at one point. So, you could be optimistic and say, hey, this team's got a positive run differential, and they are the only team with a positive run differential that far under 500. So you could think things are going to stabilize themselves eventually here, but it is just tough. I mean, they outscored the Diamondbacks 20-4 in a sweep last week and then losing all these 1-run games, and that's how you get to a negative run differential while still being 5 games under 500. At number 22, I have the LA Angels. They are 16-22 and have lost 4 straight. So the Angels continue to struggle. Of course, everybody knows moving on from Albert Pujols, they won a series over the Dodgers, but unfortunately, that did not get them back on track this past week as they were unable to put things together and make a bit of a run here, as optimists were thinking potentially could. So they started 6-2. They continued to fade. Since then they are 10-20. So just a tough break for the Angels, as once again it looks like Mike Trout is going to miss out on postseason play. And I don't get it, man. Anthony Rendon, Mike Trout, Justin Upton, just all of these guys, Shohei Ohtani, and they just can't figure it out to get over 500. The Arizona Diamondbacks come in at number 21. Arizona is 18-22. They've lost, they've won a game here, but 3-7 in their last 10. So the Diamondbacks are just, out in the National League West, it's tough, right? They're playing against the Padres, the Dodgers. They had an 0-6 stretch this past week. They had 1-10 of 13 prior to that, but then they traveled east to face the NL East, and just a tough break. And they're 9-14 on the road, a -18 run differential away from Chase Field. So solid at home for the Diamondbacks at 9-8, but again, 9-14 away from home. Not a good look if you're the Diamondbacks, especially with that tough sledding there out west. At number 20, I have the Kansas City Royals. They are 18-21, but 2-8 in their last 10. And, they had an 8-game losing streak in there. So the Royals, people were high on them. Are they the real deal early on? They were 15-8. 1-9 record since then, -37 run differential in those 10 games. They've fallen from first to third in the AL Central, from the top 10 to the bottom 10 in a bunch of power rankings. So the future is still bright, but just tough for the Royals to try to keep up with the rest of those teams in the Central. And you're going to go through tough stretches, but -29 run differential for the Royals now is going to be tough for them to overcome here moving forward. At number 19, I have the Chicago Cubs. They are 18-20 overall. They are 6-4 in their last 10, and their run differential is -6. So right there around the 500 mark, but ultimately the Cubbies, the injuries continue to mount. Jock Peterson's got to pick it up. He's now 6 for his last 12, so he started to figure things out a bit for the Cubs. But ultimately, if they're going to, really make a run in that NL Central, they're going to need people to pick it up. Kyle Hendricks, what's going on with Kyle Hendricks? He's got an ERA in the 6s. He can't hit a spot, and when you're throwing 90 miles an hour, location is the only thing that's carrying you when you're not throwing the ball by people. So he's going to have to figure it out. Zach Davies threw the ball well for the first time in a Chicago uniform last week. Rookie Keegan Thompson has been very good out of the bullpen as a multiple-inning weapon. They had won 5 in a row here recently, a couple of walk-off victories against the Dodgers, but again, getting to that 500 mark, and since then going 1-3, just kind of bringing them back down to earth if you're a Cubbies fan. At number 18, the Cincinnati Reds. They are 18-19 overall. They are 8-12 on the road and 10-7 at home, so they've struggled in road games. They have a +1 run differential and are 5-5 in their last 10. So, of course, the no-hitter from Wade Miley being thrown in there. That was just fantastic on Friday. Sonny Gray threw 7 shutout innings his last time out. He's starting to settle in. They had a 7-game losing streak mixed in there, so if you remove that from the record, 18-12 outside of that one horrible week of baseball. So the Reds could potentially hang around. They'll probably make a move or two at the deadline, but ultimately where they're at right around 500 kind of puts them in that middle tier of the league here. At number 17, I have the Seattle Mariners. They are 20-20 overall, 500, but a -17 run differential and 4-6 in their last 10 games. So I'm not sure that ultimately is going to sustain itself for the Marlins. They lost series against the Rangers and Orioles recently. So, those two teams really at the bottom of the rankings. I don't know if that's something that they're going to be doing moving forward, but Jaron Kelenic, of course, being called up. He was fantastic in AAA, 3 for 4 during his debut. So certainly something optimistic there to look at if you're an Orioles fan, because their left fielders prior to that were hitting just 193. And again, Orioles and Rangers series losses is really not what you're looking for. The last one here in segment number 3, I have the Milwaukee Brewers. They are 20-20 as well, a -17 run differential, but they've lost 3 straight and are now 3-7 in their last 10 games. So the Brewers rotation, of course, very good, but again, they've lost 6 in a row this past week to get to 500. Christian Yelich is still out with an injury. Colton Wong, Bradley Jr. out in the outfield. He made a heck of a catch the other day, but still offensively continues to struggle. And they were hot there for a second, so people had them closer to the top of the list. But dumping 6 straight, multiple series losses, it's just a tough vibe for the Brewers there as they look to get over that hump and compete with the Cardinals in the National League Central. So that'll do it from numbers 30 to 16. We'll step aside here one last time for a word from one of our sponsors and one of our sister shows. But when we come back, I'll be counting down 15 to number 1 in the power rankings. Who's 1? Who's 5? Who's 7? Stick around and find out right after this.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Welcome into the fourth and final segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed your weekend out there. It's been a fantastic Monday episode for you thus far, but we're now here to wrap things up in this last segment, counting down from number 15 down to number 1 in my power rankings as of May 16th. Where does your team stand? Have you heard their name yet? If not, they're certainly coming up here in segment number 4. But starting out at number 15, I have the Atlanta Braves. I cannot figure out the Atlanta Braves. They are 19-20 overall. They've won a couple straights. They've lost 5 in a row. They've won a couple straight. The roller coaster that is the Braves is just, it is mind-numbing sometimes. They are minus 14 overall in the run differential, 6-4 in their last 10, and a lot of this has to do with their rotation. Atlanta's rotation has an ERA in the mid-4s, and this was looked at as potentially one of their top attributes, one of their top units coming into this year. You also have Christian Pache out in center field, who's hitting just over 100. I think it was 107 last time I checked. You know, maybe sending him back down to the minor leagues to get some seasoning. They've also had some injuries. Ender Inciarte, Guillermo Herdia are sidelined with some injuries, so that's complicating things there in Atlanta. And just that offense, Acuna Jr. dealing with a core issue. Now got another thing bothering him. I mean, it's tough to figure out. But I certainly would have thought this team would have been at the top of the list here early on, and they still potentially could. I mean, they could make a move here, but ultimately you can't put them more than middle of the pack when it comes to teams, just based on what's taken place so far this summer. And number 14, I got my Philadelphia Phillies, 21-19, 6-4 in their last 10, 2 games over 500, but a minus 5 run differential. Their home to road splits are just mind-blowing as well. They are 13-6, one of the best home teams in all of baseball, and then 8-13 on the road. They finally won a road series against the Washington Nationals for the first time since 2019. They were unable to do it all of last season, even though it was a shortened season. And then they hadn't done it for the first month of this season as well. Now here on Sunday, they'll get the opportunity against the Blue Jays to do it in back-to-back series. But with all those injuries, I'm not holding my breath here. They had won 5 in a row, a 4-game sweep of the Brewers. They were looking good. And then falling flat in Atlanta, struggling down in Toronto or Dundee in Florida. It's just tough to watch. But Zach Wheeler's been good, a 2.83 ERA in 7 starts. Aaron Nola, 3.59 ERA in 8 starts. Zach Evelyn, 3.38 in 7 starts. That's their biggest strength. The relief continues to be up and down if you're a fan. I mean, these guys are just crazy to watch here. They'll walk 2, strike out 2, get out with a scoreless inning, bases loaded. It seems like if you're a Phillies fan watching out there. At number 13, I have the Tampa Bay Rays. They come in at 22-19. They had won 3 straight since being 19-19 and 500, a plus 14 run differential for the Tampa Bay Rays. So they've gotten hot here right now. They got the Yankees coming up in what should be a solid series, 6-2 in their last 8 games overall. They've been much better on the road than at home. So opposite of what I just talked about with the Phillies. They are 12-7 on the road with a plus 14 run differential, 7-10 at home with a minus 13 run differential. So the Yankees and Mets coming to town this upcoming week for the Rays. That's going to be a fun couple of series to watch. And, again, it's going to be fun in the American League East coming down the stretch here. The New York Mets are at number 12, 18-15 overall. They have lost 2 straight since putting together that 7-game winning streak. Them on the road, 11-4. Those guys at home, 7-11. Or no, vice versa, 11-4 at home and 7-11 on the road. So they've been very good at Citi Field, but not good away from Citi Field as they continue to struggle a little bit. So they had won 5 in a row, then they dumped 2 straight. So the National League East and their roller coasters are just outstanding. I mean, Francisco Lindor is starting to pick it up here. His last 4 games, 6 for 14. He's got a double, a home run, 4 walks. Is it coincidence that was right alongside the winning streak? As Lindor goes, is that how the Mets go here moving forward? It's just, man. But then you also got Jacob deGrom on the injured list. And do they want to rush him back? And they won games without him in the rotation. So ultimately, the Mets are kind of in a wait-and-see mode for myself. And ultimately, if they're the real deal here, or if this is just a good stretch for them over the past 10 days. The Cleveland Indians at number 11 at 21-16. They've lost 2 in a row since being 21-14, but 7-3 in their last 10. So 10 out of 13 overall. They're on the heels of the White Sox. They got a pretty favorable schedule here moving forward. They've been no-hit twice this year, which is why I'm just like, man, I can't put them at the top of the list. How do they just win all these games and then go no-hit in between, right? It really has to do with the pitching staff. The staff as a whole, a 3.51 ERA. It's just the offense in Cleveland that really leaves me wanting more, and I'm not sure it's going to be sustainable because they're 25th in OPS, second worst batting average in baseball, and yet somehow their record says that they're a really good ball club. I'm just not sold on the Indians. At number 10, I got the New York Yankees. The Yankees are 22-17 overall. They've started to play better baseball of late. Stanton got all kinds of hots and then had himself a quad issue. So winning 9 of 12, Stanton carrying them. Is this due to the offense? But all of a sudden, boom, they got an injury to deal with. It's just 12-5 in their last 17 games. But they do have a 10-game road trip coming up. So we're going to learn a little bit about the Yankees here in the near future, starting out with a trip in the division down to Tampa Bay. Ultimately, are they going to be able to put it together? Garrett Cole has been very good. He's been, worth every penny of that contract. But again, going on the road for 2 weeks here, we're going to see what the Yankees are made of. At number 9, I have the Toronto Blue Jays. They are 21-17 overall, 7-3 in their last 10. They haven't been able to keep George Springer on the field, so they've been very good, and their top offseason addition still hasn't played for them, which is why I think they could be even better once he's able to get healthy. Moving forward, the schedule gets a bit easier for them as well. It's just things are kind of adding up for the Blue Jays to be really, really good here as they get healthy, and they also play a bit of easier competition moving forward. So look out for the Blue Jays in that offense. Just watching them, rake baseballs against the Phillies here, beating up the Braves before that. This team is somebody to mess with there in the American League. At number 8, I got the Houston Astros, 23-17. They've won 5 straight games, 8-2 in their last 10. A plus 52 run differential, so they are getting hot. Yordan Alvarez continues to rake for him. I mean, the kid's played in 116 total games, so not even a full season, and he's got 35 doubles, 34 home runs, and 103 RBIs. So add 50 more games to that, and this kid is just super impressive offensively. So they've gotten him back healthy. And yes, they lost a series to the Yankees. They won a series over the Blue Jays. So they are very, very good. Gurriel, Bregman, Brantley, they've also been extremely solid. And the Astros are starting to put it together, starting to figure it out here. So they went 6-1 to start the year, then 7-10, but now putting it back together. And the lineup and the rotation have been very good down there in Houston. And, man, it was just a fun series in New York. Cheater banging the trash can, but still Houston showing that they're still a solid ball club this year and are going to be somebody to mess with come playoff time. At number 7, I have the LA Dodgers, 22-17, but they've won 4 in a row. So they had that stretch of 4-14. Now they've won 4 straight again because they were only 18-17, a game just above 500. And ultimately it was like, man, what is going wrong out in L.A.? But again, they've been very good here recently. They've been able to get back up to the list and just, okay, nobody panic out there in L.A. They added Pujols. They've added other pieces to the bench. So again, they're right at the top there. But Corey Seager going down with that fractured hand could set them back here a little bit ultimately. And, we'll see if L.A. can overcome all these injuries. At number 6, I got the St. Louis Cardinals, 23-17, and they've lost 2 straight. So they were 23-15 and playing fantastic baseball there in the National League Central. It's just, I didn't think they'd be this good, right? I had them winning the division, but ultimately as one of the top teams in baseball, 13-4 in their last 17 to figure it out after an 8-10 start. Jack Flaherty is 6-0 with a 2.83 ERA at the top of that rotation. Nolan Arenado in the month of May is hitting .364 with 6 extra base hits. So he looks like a fantastic addition. But man, they got the Pirates, the Cubs coming up. So it's going to be a fun watch there for Cardinals fans as they continue to play great baseball. At number 5, I have the San Francisco Giants. I can't fully buy into the Giants just yet. And they are 23-16, but 5-5 in their last 10. So kind of hovering right around that 500 mark. Buster Posey's hitting almost 400. Again, he's been very good here. Can he keep this up over the course of 162? But the starting rotation has been the reason for their success. I mean, the rotation has a 2.99 ERA thus far, and the offense has been just good enough. So Tyler Rogers has been their go-to reliever. It's just, man, Gabe Kapler's got it rolling out there in San Francisco. I don't know if there's any other way to put it. At number 4, I have the San Diego Padres. They are 23-17. They're a game or a half a game behind the Giants out in the National League West. They've won 2 straight, 6-4 in their last 10. And the Padres, I mean, encouraging stuff, right? Dinelson Lamet, Chris Paddock are returning and throwing well. They haven't been close to 100% all season when it comes to health, dealing with arm issues, arm injuries. So them turning it around and figuring it out. They split with the Giants here recently, so that could be a battle coming down the stretch here. So, but the Padres just getting healthy is going to be their biggest concern. And once they get everybody healthy, they haven't been healthy, and they're still 6 games over 500. So I think that could be the difference maker down the stretch. The Oakland A's occupy the number 3 spot, 24-17 overall, 5-5 in their last 10. They have a -9 run differential just due to their start and getting blown out. So 7 games over 500 with a -9 run differential. But Matt Chapman's heating up. He's hitting .326 over his last couple of weeks. During his first 24 games, he was only hitting .152. So Chapman's certainly starting to figure it out. You would assume the power will show up here shortly as he's starting to find his stroke. They're 21-9 since that start to the season, of course. Again, just Oakland has been impressive outside of that first week, and it's tough to put them anywhere below this top 3 or 5 when it comes to the rankings. So they took care of business against the Red Sox, but Oakland, they had some trouble with Minnesota. But again, they're going to have a little bit of a blip, and I think they'll be just fine. At number 2, I have the Boston Red Sox. They do have the best winning percentage in all of baseball at .610. They've won 3 straight games, 7-3 in their last 10. But again, I don't know. Are they going to do it for 162, right? 22 and 14 or 25 and 16 overall. They started 0-3, so 25 and 13 since then. A 5-1 week against the Tigers and the Orioles. Nick Pivetta has somehow been lights out. 5-0 with a 3.19 ERA and 7 starts. He was nowhere near that during his time in Philadelphia ever. So it's just, man, I don't know. I can't fully jump into the Red Sox, but certainly they've earned this second spot. At number 1, I have the Chicago White Sox. I think they're the best team in baseball, 23 and 15 overall, a plus 60 run differential, which is tops in baseball, 7-3 in their last 10. I mean, Tony La Russa knows what he's doing. They got a couple of injuries, Jimenez, Luis Robert, and they continue to have the best run differential. They continue to be the top team in the sport. So I think he knows what he's doing, right? It's come out. Luis Robert will not need surgery, so he should be back at some point this summer. They went 4-1 this past week. They just continue to stay hot. Andrew Vaughn has been very, very good as a rookie, an 819 OPS since late April. And just without those guys and the injuries they're dealing with to be at the top of the list and the top run differential, I think it just goes to show their depth, and they're going to be a problem when it comes to postseason baseball. So where do you guys have the rankings? Where in the top 5? What would you change? Would you put the Red Sox at the top? Maybe move the Giants a little higher, the Cardinals? Let me know in the comments out there what you guys would switch around based on my power rankings. But that does it here for today's episode of the GSMC Baseball Podcast. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We had a fantastic episode. The Dodgers adding Albert Pujols, a couple of other bench pieces, trying to get over the hump after that recent swell of 4-14. I then brought you guys up to date on all the injuries taking place. Again, huge names out there just dealing with nagging injuries, it seems, throughout the regular season. And then, of course, running through my power rankings for the first time. So, again, let me know what you guys would switch up. And before I let you go, please rate and review the podcast. Follow us on social media. All of that helps continue to grow and spread the word of the baseball podcast. But most of all, enjoy the week coming up, everybody. I appreciate you guys listening, and I'll talk to everyone again on Thursday.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.